Tonight, every story starts with something that looks official: a quarantine notice, an adoption packet, a maintenance manual. That is the trap. The horror does not kick the door in. It arrives formatted, filed, and waiting for your name. If you like this kind of slow paperwork nightmare, leave a like, subscribe for the next case. Now let us get into it. The dark web mailed me a quarantine notice for a building I walked past yesterday, and every window had my face in it. I'll keep this simple, because every time I dress it up, it sounds less believable. I walked past a building. The next afternoon, a notice showed up, telling me that building had been quarantined because of me. That is the whole hook, if you want the neat version. The messy version is that I had been awake too long. I had been trying to make rent with too many small jobs, and I had a bad habit of buying weird city documents from places online where normal people should not be shopping. The site I used was not on the regular internet. It was a hidden market for leaked municipal records, old permits, abandoned property lists, fire inspection photos, condemned building packets, courier manifests for places that were supposed to be empty. I sold cleaned up scans to local history pages and preservation accounts, which let me pretend the whole thing was research instead of trespassing through paperwork. The forum attached to it called itself Cordon Board. The regulars joked that every city had a second city under it, made entirely of forms. The third order was listed under new arrivals at 2 in the morning. Visual quarantine notice, local recipient, active window event. I laughed because it sounded like haunted city paperwork. The preview image was a yellow paper sleeve with a black stripe across the top. No building name, no address. The seller had no rating, but the listing was cheap, and I was tired. That is usually enough explanation for the stupid things I have done. I clicked buy. The site asked for my mailing drop. I used the rented box at the copy shop, same as always. Then a little red line appeared under the order confirmation. Delivery will occur only after exposure. I assumed that meant the seller would not mail anything until some file was unlocked or some payment was confirmed. The site used strange wording all the time. Half the sellers talked like they were writing warning labels for haunted appliances. The next day, around 4 in the afternoon, I walked to the pharmacy on Vareo Street because my regular one was out of cheap allergy pills. It was one of those routes where nothing interesting has ever happened. Bodega. Check cash in place. 2 apartment buildings with broken buzzers. A small brick building in the middle of the block that I had never really looked at before. It was 4 stories, tall, narrow, and older than everything around it. The windows were black with dust from the inside, not boarded up, not broken, just dark enough that they looked painted shut. There was a faded sign over the door that said Wells and Harrow, though I could not tell if that had been a business, a lawyer's office, or just 2 names somebody had once been proud of. I noticed it because a delivery guy was standing in front of it with a paper bag in one hand, staring up at the second floor. He looked annoyed in that specific way people look when an app tells them to bring food to a door that does not exist. When I passed, he asked if I knew which buzzer was for 3C. I told him I did not think anyone lived there. He pointed at his phone and said, "Somebody does." I should have kept walking. Instead, I glanced up. Every window was empty. That is what I remember thinking. Not dark, not dirty, empty, like the rooms behind them had been scooped out of the building and only the black rectangles remained. The delivery guy cursed at his app, took a photo of the front door, and left the bag on the stoop. I bought my allergy pills and went home. The quarantine notice arrived the next afternoon. The copy shop mailbox was usually stuffed with junk catalogs and print proofs from old clients. That day, there was one envelope inside, stiff and square, made from thick yellow paper. No stamp, no postmark. My box number was typed in the center, and under it, in smaller letters, was the phrase, "Recipient confirmed by window line." I opened it on the bus because I was too impatient to wait until I got home. Inside was a folded sheet of the same yellow paper, a plastic sleeve containing 12 photographs, and a narrow strip of black tape that smelled faintly like hot rubber. The sheet had a city seal printed at the top, except it was not any seal I recognized. The eagle in the middle had its wings spread over a row of windows instead of arrows. The notice read, "Temporary visual quarantine. Property, 414 Vireo Street, former Wells and Harrow building. Exposure date, yesterday. External face, contact, confirmed. Recipient shall avoid direct view of all window surfaces until containment ends. If you have ever received a fake legal threat, you know the first feeling is irritation." I sat there on the bus, offended that someone had wasted nice stationery on such a dumb prank. Then I slid the photographs out of the sleeve. The first one showed the building from across the street. Same brick face, same faded sign, same dark windows. The second was closer, focused on the first floor left window. My face was in it, not my reflection from the sidewalk. The angle was wrong. The face was inside the glass, looking out from behind the grime. It was me at 13, wearing the blue windbreaker I had forgotten existed until that second. The third photo showed another window and another age, 17, headphones around my neck, jaw tight with the kind of anger I used to carry everywhere. Every photograph showed another window. Every window had my face, not the same face copied over and over. Me tired after college. Me with a beard I tried for 6 months. Me last winter in the grey hoodie I still owned. The last photograph showed me, as I looked yesterday, pharmacy bag in hand, standing inside the 4th floor center window. Behind that version of me, deep in the room, stood the delivery guy with a food bag. I got off 2 stops early and walked home telling myself somebody had scraped old pictures, used AI, staged the building, anything. There were explanations, bad ones, but explanations. At home, I set the photographs on my kitchen table and opened cordon board on my laptop. The listing was gone. My order page was not. Under the purchase confirmation, where shipping updates usually appeared, there was a new status message. Exposure recorded at 16:22. Notice delivered. Recipient has viewed proof. Window line has opened response period. Below that was a link labeled Municipal Mirror Portal. I did not click it right away. I sat there with the cursor over it, breathing through my mouth because my nose was clogged, thinking about how stupid I had been every time I made fun of people in stories for clicking curse links. Then I clicked it anyway. The page loaded as plain text on a gray background. No logo, no images, no menu. Just my name, my mailing box, and the address on Vireo Street. There was a table underneath with columns for floor, window, capture age, stability, and release status. The capture ages went from 7 to 32. That was my current age. Most of the release statuses said held. A few said humidity damage. One said missing since 2009. That was the year I broke my front tooth and spent a whole summer smiling with my mouth closed. The second floor photo showed me with that exact temporary cap. There was an option at the bottom of the page, contest quarantine notice. I clicked that too, because panic can look a lot like problem solving when you are alone. A form opened. It asked for my reason for contesting. I typed, "I did not enter this building and do not consent to having my image used." The page accepted the text and gave me a case number. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from a blocked number. "Consent is not required from pedestrians." I closed the laptop. I closed it so hard the hinge made a sound I still hate remembering. For a while, I just stood in my kitchen with my hand on the lid, listening to the refrigerator hum and the upstairs neighbor roll something heavy across their floor. The normal thing would have been to call the police, but what was I going to say? A dark website sent me fake city paperwork and pictures of my face in an abandoned building, and I had bought the paperwork on purpose. I called 311 instead. That felt safer. Bureaucracy answering bureaucracy. The woman on the line sounded tired but patient. I gave her the address and asked whether there was any quarantine, hazard order, or active inspection at 414 Vireo Street. She put me on hold. When she came back, her voice had changed in a small way. Not scared, just more careful. "That property is not available for public inquiry," she said. I asked what that meant. She said, "It means I cannot provide information on that location." I told her I had received a notice. There was a pause. Then she asked, "Was the notice yellow?" I did not answer. She sighed very softly, as if I had confirmed something by being quiet. "Sir," she said, "do not return to the property. Do not photograph the windows. Do not allow anyone to photograph you near the property. If the notice included tape, place it over the camera lens of any device used to view the included materials." That was the first time the fear became useful. It sharpened everything. I asked how she knew about the tape. She said, "I'm going to disconnect now. You should too." The line clicked dead. I taped over my laptop camera, then my phone camera. Then, because fear makes you superstitious and practical at the same time, I taped over the peephole in my apartment door. That night, I did not sleep much. Around 1 a.m, I heard my phone vibrate on the kitchen table. I had turned it face down, camera covered, sound off. It buzzed once, then again, then kept buzzing in a rhythm that felt too patient to be a normal message thread. When I checked it, the blocked number had sent 12 images. They were the same 12 windows from the notice, but the faces had moved. Not much. In the first batch, every version of me had been facing outward. In the new images, some had turned their heads. The 13-year-old version was looking toward the window beside him. The 17-year-old had one hand pressed to the glass. The current version of me on the 4th floor was no longer holding the pharmacy bag. He was holding the yellow notice. Under the images was one line of text. Response period ends at 4:22 p.m. I searched for smaller parts of it. The building had been an insurance adjustment office in the 1970s, then a debt collection firm, then nothing. A 1998 article said a fire had started in the records room, and 3 firefighters reported faces behind upper windows while the building was supposed to be empty. A week later, 414 Vireo was sealed for air quality remediation. That seal had never officially been lifted. In an old neighborhood thread, kids called it the yearbook building because if you stared long enough, you saw somebody you used to be. One user kept warning them not to stand across from it after sunset. His username was H. Andrews. I found his obituary. Harold Andrews, retired city code inspector, died in 2011. The obituary photos showed the delivery guy. Not similar. Not maybe. The same man I'd seen outside 414 Vireo Street the day before, holding a paper bag and asking about 3C. The printout had barely finished when someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 soft knocks, then a pause, then one more. I looked through the peephole before remembering I had taped over it. The tape was black on my side. I could see nothing. The person knocked again. "City follow-up," a man said. I did not move. "Recipient needs to confirm non-entry." His voice was calm, not threatening. That made it worse. A threatening voice gives you something to push against. A calm, bureaucratic voice makes you feel like the world has already decided where you belong. I backed away from the door and texted the only person I trusted not to make fun of me immediately. My younger sister, who has the exact practical cruelty you need in a crisis. I sent her photos of the notice, the window images, and the obituary. Then I typed, "If I stop answering, call me." She replied almost instantly, "Is this for one of your creepy building things?" Then, "Why is your face in all of these?" Before I could answer, the man outside my door said my sister's name. He did not shout it. He just said it, like he was reading from a form. Emergency contact listed. Would you like us to notify her of your relocation? I grabbed a kitchen knife. I'm not proud of how little comfort it gave me. My apartment door was cheap, but the thing outside did not sound like something that needed to force its way in. My sister called. I answered with the phone against my ear and one hand over the taped camera. "Do not open the door," she said. "I know." "No, listen to me." I reverse searched one of the photos. The building comes up in a city archive, but the page is weird. It says the property has temporary occupants. What occupants? You. The man outside knocked one final time. "Contest window filed," he said. "Inspection scheduled." Then his footsteps moved away down the hall. My sister stayed on the phone while I dragged my little table in front of the door. She kept talking because she knows silence makes me do stupid things. She told me to pack a bag. She told me to come to her place. She told me to send everything to her email and not trust my laptop. I did all of that except the last part. When I opened the laptop again, the gray portal was already up, even though I had closed the browser. The table had changed. There was a new row. Floor, 4, window, center, capture age, 32, stability, disputed, release, status, inspection en route. Under the table was a scan of a form I'd not seen before. It was called a pedestrian transfer addendum. It had my name on it, my date of birth, and the address of my apartment building. In the box marked reason for off-site inspection, someone had typed, "External face has disputed quarantine from unapproved residents." The signature at the bottom was Harold Andrews. I left the apartment through the fire escape. Again, not heroic, not clever. I had an old backpack, a phone with black tape over both cameras, and one shoe untied because my hands were shaking too much to fix it. The alley behind my building smelled like wet cardboard and fryer oil. I climbed down scraped my palm on the ladder, and landed beside a stack of crates from the restaurant downstairs. My sister wanted me to get a ride share. I did not. I could not stand the idea of getting into a stranger's car with my face hidden under some city form I did not understand. I walked. The problem was that my route to her apartment took me within 3 blocks of Vireo Street. I told myself that was not close enough to matter. At the corner of Vireo and Mason, my phone buzzed. The blocked number again. Inspection cannot proceed without recipient present. I kept walking. Another buzz. Look up to verify you are not present. That sentence made me stop harder than any threat could have. It had the logic of a trap and the tone of a safety instruction. I stood there under the greenish light of a bodega sign, staring at the sidewalk, aware of every window around me. Apartment windows, car windows, the dark glass of the closed laundromat. Something tapped from inside the laundromat. One tap, then another. I looked before I could stop myself. My reflection stood in the dark glass, only it was not reflecting me. It was dressed in the blue windbreaker from when I was 13. It lifted one hand and placed it flat against the inside of the laundromat window. Its mouth opened around words I could not hear. Behind it, where the rows of washing machines should have been, I saw the hallway of 414 Vireo Street. Long, narrow, yellow paper notices taped to every door. I ran the rest of the way to my sister's apartment without looking above the first floor of any building. She lives in a newer place with a lobby camera, key fob, and the kind of front desk person who has seen enough tenant drama to stop asking questions. My sister met me downstairs, wearing pajama pants and a winter coat, took one look at the tape on my phone, and did not make the joke she clearly wanted to make. Upstairs, she made coffee. Neither of us drank. We spread the documents across her table. She had already found more than I had. The city archive page was still open on her computer. It listed 414 Vireo as contained property, visual hazard class C, external face events. Most of the page was blank unless you highlighted it. Then white text appeared on white background. There were hundreds of names. Some had dates beside them. Some had addresses. Some had notes like returned after dispute, released as reflection only, and family notified by mail. My name had been added at the bottom. My sister clicked it before I could stop her. The screen filled with a live image of the Wells and Harrow building. Every window was lit from behind. Every window had my face in it. This time, there were more than 12. I had not understood how many windows the building really had until they were all bright. Tiny basement panes at sidewalk level, narrow bathroom windows on the side, a half-moon transom over the front door. Each one held a different version of me, pressed close to the glass. Some were ages I recognized, some were not. There was an old version of me, with loose skin under the chin and pale eyes looking furious. There was a version that could not have been more than 4, crying so hard his mouth had gone square. There was a version of me with a shaved head I had never had. There was one with a scar across the forehead, one with a wedding ring, one with a hospital bracelet. My sister whispered, "Are those all from photos?" Before I answered, the current version of me in the 4th floor center window raised the yellow notice. He turned it around. On the back, written in thick black marker, were the words, "You filed a contest." My sister slammed the laptop shut. The knock came from her balcony door. She lives on the 8th floor. Her curtains were drawn, but the glass behind them ticked softly, like a fingernail asking permission. My sister said, "Bathroom! Now!" She dragged me into the only room without an exterior window and turned the shower on, full hot. A minute later, my phone buzzed on the sink. I had not brought it into the bathroom. The screen showed the portal again. Inspection active. Recipient absent from quarantine property. Nearest reflective access. 8th floor balcony. Sister residence. Below that, a live chat box had opened under the name Handrews. You looked up. Then, do not make this larger. The building only holds what the city cannot place. Return, and the others remain stable. I typed one question before my sister could stop me. What others? 12 new photographs appeared. They showed my sister's building from the street. Balcony door, lobby glass, elevator doors, the dark microwave reflection in her kitchen. In every reflective surface, a different version of me waited. Then the bathroom mirror fog shifted. A hand wiped a clear streak through it from the other side. My sister threw the phone into the toilet. I smashed the mirror with the metal lid from the tank. Behind the broken glass, there was no wall, only a hallway lined with yellow notices and a delivery bag under a buzzing fluorescent light. From the hallway, Harold Andrews said, "You have expanded the quarantine." We ran down the fire stairs. Every window we passed showed rooms trying to keep pace with us. At the lobby level, the security monitor showed me standing at the front desk, signing a yellow form. My sister pulled me away before I could see the signature. We ended up in a 24-hour diner 6 blocks away. I used her phone to call 911 and said a man was impersonating a city worker. The dispatcher asked for the address. When I gave my sister's, she paused. "Are you currently at 414 Vireo Street?" I told her no. "Our system is showing that as your active location." Across the diner, in the black window beside the door, every booth reflected normally except ours. In our reflection, I sat alone. My sister's seat was empty. Harold Andrews stood behind me with one hand on the booth. I hung up. The city might not have understood the forms, but some part of it recognized them. My sister said, "We have to get your name out of the system." The only system I could touch was cordon board. We bought a cheap prepaid phone from a gas station and used the diner's Wi-Fi from the edge of the parking lot. Cordon board opened as if nothing had happened, except my order page now carried a red banner. Quarantine expanded due to unauthorized contest. Recipient may resolve in person. The only button left was schedule return. I pressed it. I was not brave. I was cornered by paperwork, and paperwork always makes you believe there is one last correct box to check. The appointment was for the next day at 4:22 p.m., the exact time of my exposure. I had to bring the original notice, the black tape, and one witness not listed as an emergency contact. At the bottom, a line blinked in red. Failure to attend authorizes replacement. We found the witness through the only human piece of the whole mess. Harold Andrews had a daughter listed in his obituary. I will not use her name here, because after what she did for us, she deserves at least that. She did not hang up when I said her father's name. She got very quiet, then asked, "Did he bring you a delivery?" She met us near Vireo Street and looked at the yellow notice without touching it. "He's not my father," she said. "Not anymore." Her real father had been sent into 414 Vireo after the 1998 fire. The building learned his job. Notices, access, compliance, signatures. After he died, it kept using him. It probably does not want you, she said. It wants a face that can leave. She said the building trapped versions, not bodies at first. Glimpses, reflections, little visual records the city collected without meaning to. IDs, security feeds, yearbook scans, family photos, anything that fixed a person as an image. A living person only became useful when one of those old panes matched them closely enough. Your notice says external face contact, she said. That means something inside matched you. At 4:02 p.m., we walked to Vireo Street. My sister wanted to come. I told her no, not because I was noble, because the instructions had said one witness not listed as emergency contact, and the building seemed to care about exact wording more than mercy. The daughter came with me. The block looked normal in daylight, which somehow made it worse. People carried groceries, cars idled. A man in a suit talked too loudly into earbuds. The Wells and Harrow building sat in the middle of it all, narrow and dark, pretending to be an ordinary sealed property. The delivery bag was still on the stoop. It should have been rotten after 2 days. It looked fresh. I held the yellow notice in one hand and the strip of black tape in the other. My phone was back at the bank parking lot with my sister. No camera, no mirror, no reflective tools. I had even taken off my watch. At 4:22 exactly, the front door unlocked. No sound from inside. Just a small metallic click, polite as a receptionist. The daughter said, "Do not look at the glass once you are in. If it asks you to verify, say you are present but not available." What does that mean? It means whatever kept my father from coming home entirely did not like those words. Then she stepped back, because a witness is not the same as company. I opened the door. The lobby was much smaller than it should have been. A narrow tile floor, a dead directory board, mailboxes along one wall with no names, only years. 1998, 2001, 2009, 2016, 2024, 2026. The air was warm and dusty. The windows on either side of the door were covered from the inside with yellow paper, so I could not see the street. There was a desk at the end of the lobby. Harold Andrews sat behind it. Up close, he looked less like a ghost than a badly maintained photograph. His edges were soft. His tie was from another decade. When he moved, the motion came a fraction late, as if the room had to approve each frame. "Notice," he said. I put the yellow sheet on the desk. "Tape." I put the black tape beside it. He looked at my face for a long time. I kept my eyes on his collar. There was a little gold pin shaped like the city seal with the window-winged eagle. "Recipient has disputed quarantine," he said. "I am present, but not available." His mouth tightened. Somewhere above us, every window in the building tapped once. Harold opened a drawer and removed a form. "Availability is determined by visual confirmation. I am present, but not available." He slid the form across the desk. "Sign non-entry and release all unstable panes." The form said non-entry affidavit at the top. Under it was my name. Under that was a paragraph stating that I had never entered 414 Vireo Street, had never seen any occupant, and waived all claim to exterior likenesses collected in error. It sounded like freedom until I reached the last line. I understand that all unclaimed exterior likenesses may be used for municipal continuity. That was how these things get you. not with a monster lunging in the hallway, with a sentence that almost means one thing and legally means another. I said, "No." Harold's eyes lifted to mine. The lobby changed, not all at once. The corners stretched first, the mailbox wall pulled backward, years multiplying down the row. 1976, 1983, 1992, 2009, 2038, 2044. The desk slid farther away, while somehow remaining close enough for Harold's hands to rest on it. Behind him, a door opened. Through it, I saw the building's central hallway, the one from my sister's broken mirror. Yellow notices, buzzing lights, the delivery bag on the floor. And doors, dozens of doors, each with a little rectangular window at eye level. My face looked through every one. The 13-year-old hit his window with the heel of his hand. The old one simply watched. The current one, the one who had held the notice, smiled at me. Harold said, "Replacement is available." I understood then what the quarantine was. It was not meant to protect the city from a sickness. It was meant to protect the building from losing its collected faces. If someone outside realized they had been copied, that person became a leak, a disputed pain. The building either needed them to sign away the copy, return to stabilize it, or be replaced by a version that would stop arguing. I thought about my sister disappearing from the diner reflection. I thought about every emergency call sending me back here. I picked up the black tape. Harold said, "Tape is for camera surfaces only." I know. I leaned across the desk and pressed the strip over his eyes. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the whole building made a sound like a file cabinet tipping down an endless stairwell. Harold screamed, but it came from the windows, not his mouth. The lobby lights went out. The hallway behind him flashed white, then yellow, then black. All the little door windows filled with hands. I ran. I did not run back out the front. I do not know why. Maybe the room had already turned me around. Maybe the building wanted me deeper, and I could not fight the angle. I ran past the desk, past Harold thrashing with the tape across his eyes, and into the hallway. Every door had my name on it. Behind the little windows, different versions of me reacted as I passed. Some shouted silently, some begged, some looked relieved. One, a teenager in the old headphones, shook his head hard, warning me away from the stairwell. I took the stairs anyway. The stairwell had no windows, which felt like mercy until I saw the landings. Each landing had a mirror mounted where a fire safety map should have been. I kept my head down and counted steps. First landing, second, third, fourth. At the fourth floor, the door was open. The center room waited at the end of the hall. I knew it because the door was not labeled with my name. It was labeled yesterday. Inside, the room looked like the block outside 414 Vareo Street, but flattened and wrong. The sidewalk stopped after 10 feet. The bodega sign hung against a bare wall. The pharmacy bag sat on the floor. In the window, facing the real street outside, stood the version of me from the photograph. He turned around. Seeing your own face on someone else is not like looking in a mirror. A mirror has the decency to obey you. This thing had my posture without my weight, my eyes without my attention. It held the yellow notice in both hands like a diploma. "You were late," it said. Its voice was mine, but smoothed out, easier, less tired. I could hear the windows downstairs tapping faster. Late for what? For being done with the outside. I looked at the window behind it. Through the grime, I could see Vireo Street in daylight. The daughter stood on the opposite sidewalk, rigid, watching the building. People passed behind her, unaware. The world was right there, one pane away. The version of me stepped aside and offered me the window. "Just look," it said. "They will see you. It will count." That almost got me. Not because I believed it, but because I wanted the outside so badly. I wanted one normal person to point up and say, "There he is." I wanted reality to be decided by witnesses. Then I saw the delivery bag in the room. It was not on the floor anymore. It was open. Inside were dozens of folded yellow notices, each addressed to someone else. The top one had my sister's name. I picked up the bag. The other me moved fast. It grabbed my wrist with my own hand. Its skin felt cold and papery, like touching a photograph left in a basement. It smiled wider than I do. "That is not yours. Neither is my face." I shoved it backward into the window. The glass did not break. It accepted him. He flattened against it, features spreading for one awful second across the pane. Then every window in the room filled with every age of me at once, layered over each other, open-mouthed and furious. I threw the delivery bag through the window. This time, the glass broke outward. The sound on Vireo Street was real. People screamed. The daughter ducked as yellow notices burst from the fourth-floor window like birds made of paper. I climbed onto the sill without looking down. Behind me, the room had become a hallway again, and Harold Andrews was coming up the stairs with black tape still sealed across his eyes. He knew exactly where I was. "Recipient is visible," he said. I jumped onto the fire escape. It was rusted, narrow, and definitely not inspected by anyone alive. My foot slipped on the first rung. I hit my chin on the rail hard enough to taste blood. Below me, the daughter yelled my name, and for once, hearing it from outside did not feel like a trap. I climbed down while the windows above me slammed open one after another. My faces leaned out. The child, the teenager, the old man, the version with the scar, the version with the wedding ring, the version from yesterday, half flat now, his cheek stretched wrong where the glass had taken him. They did not scream. They all spoke in the same calm voice. "Available." The daughter grabbed me at the bottom and dragged me into the street. A bus honked. Someone filmed us from the sidewalk. I shouted at them to stop, but of course, they did not. People never stop filming when the impossible finally gives them something to do. The moment the first phone camera pointed at me, every window in the Wells and Harrow building went dark. All except one. The little transom above the front door stayed lit. Harold Andrews appeared in it, black tape across his eyes, and raised one hand in a small, patient wave. The city arrived 10 minutes later. Not police, not firefighters. 3 white vans with no logos parked along the curb, and people in grey coveralls stepped out, carrying rolls of yellow paper. They did not ask witnesses what happened. They did not look at the broken 4th-floor window. They started covering every reflective surface on the block. Car windows, storefront glass, the bodega drink cooler, even a puddle in the gutter. One of them approached me with a clipboard. The daughter stepped between us. "He is not signing," she said. The person with the clipboard did not argue. They looked past her at me and said, "Then he remains disputed." That was 2 weeks ago. My sister is okay mostly. Her bathroom wall is a wall again, though the landlord is still angry about the mirror. She moved out anyway. We do not talk near uncovered windows if we can help it. We both keep black tape over our phone cameras, though I know now the tape was never protection by itself. It was a label, a way to mark a surface as already claimed. Cordon board is gone from my browser. The rented mailbox is closed. The copy shop owner said a city courier came by and took all mail connected to my box, then left a receipt with no return address. I kept one thing, not the notice, not the photographs. Those were taken by the people in gray coveralls while I was sitting on the curb with my chin bleeding. I kept a scrap from the delivery bag. It had stuck to my sleeve when I climbed out the window. Just a torn corner of brown paper with a grease stain and part of an order label. The name on the label is not mine. It is not Harold Andrews's either. It is my sister's. Last night, someone slid a yellow envelope under my apartment door. I have moved twice since Vareo Street, and I never gave the new address to the copy shop, the forum, or the city hotline. The envelope had no stamp, no postmark, and no name. Just one line typed in the center. Recipient remains visible. I have not opened it. I know that sounds like restraint, but it is more like exhaustion. The envelope is on my kitchen table right now, under a cereal bowl, as if cheap ceramic can hold down whatever city is folded inside it. Across the room, my window is covered with a blanket. The blanket moved about an hour ago. Not much, just enough for a thin line of glass to show near the sill. I did not look directly at it, but I saw the reflection on the dark television screen. There was a building behind me that is not on my street. There were yellow papers in every window, and in the top floor center pane, where my face used to be, there was an empty spot shaped exactly like someone waiting for me to look up. The dark web sent me an adoption file for a family that only exists during rain, and my name was already on the chore chart. The first thing I should say is that I was not looking for a family. I know that makes the whole thing sound cleaner than it was, like some sad little moral fable about getting what you ask for online. But I was not lonely in that direction. I had a mother. I had a stepfather who sent birthday texts 3 days late and acted like that made them casual instead of late. I had cousins I muted in group chats during election season. My life had the normal amount of family in it, which is to say enough to annoy me and not enough to save me. What I was looking for was money. That is less poetic, but it is true. I was taking transcription jobs through a hidden board that paid in crypto because the legal work had dried up and my landlord had stopped pretending to be patient. The board mostly handled boring files people did not want attached to their names. Old deposition audio, private medical dictation, insurance interviews, family court recordings with names removed badly enough that you felt dirty by the second page. I told myself I was just typing what somebody else had already said. The job posting that found me was called Rain Custody Digitization, County Legacy Format. It had no poster name, no preview audio, and a payout that was too high for clerical work. I almost skipped it because even desperation has a little pride. Then thunder rolled somewhere beyond my apartment window. The board refreshed by itself. The job moved to the top of my queue. Assigned candidate confirmed. I had not clicked anything. The file downloaded before I could close the browser. Not a video, not audio. A zipped folder with my first name as the file title. I sat there with my cheap desk lamp flickering and rain starting to touch the glass, trying to decide whether curiosity was a personality trait or a symptom. The smart move would have been to delete it. I opened it. Inside was a scanned adoption packet from 1996. The paper had the soft gray blur of something copied too many times. The county seal at the top was real, or close enough to make my stomach tighten. The form listed the child as unplaced, then pending, then present during rainfall only. The birth date was mine. The adoptive family name was Vale. Father, Thomas Vale. Mother, Lydia Vale. Children in household, Elise, Rowan, Peter, June. Residents, active during qualifying precipitation. There was a photograph attached to the second page. A family of 6 stood on a front porch in heavy rain. The parents were smiling too wide, not like monsters, just like people being told to look happy for an official picture. 4 children stood in a row between them, all wearing yellow raincoats. The porch behind them belonged to a narrow white house with blue trim and water pouring off the roof in steady ropes. In the far left corner of the photo, half hidden behind a porch post, there was an empty hook labeled with my first name. I zoomed in until the pixels broke apart. Not my full legal name, not a guess. My first name in the exact handwriting my mother used on school lunch notes when I was little, with the extra loop she put in the last letter because she thought it made things cheerful. I closed the photo and found the next scan. It was a chore chart, the kind that should have been on a refrigerator in a busy house, written in marker, laminated, and smeared at the corners by small hands. Down the left side were the children's names. Across the top were chores, set bowls under leaks, brush mud from shoes, count rooms before thunder, answer mother on first call, keep youngest away from dry door. At the bottom, in the same handwriting as the porch hook, was my name. My assigned chore was wipe windows from inside. I laughed once. It came out too sharp and made the apartment feel smaller. Then my phone lit up with a weather alert. Heavy rain expected for your area until 11:40 p.m. Under that, from an unknown number, came a photo. It showed my apartment window from the outside, not the building from the street, not a distant shot. The camera was pressed right up against the glass, looking in through rainwater. My desk lamp glowed in the corner. My laptop was open. I could see the top of my own head bent over the adoption file. The text under it said, "We can see you better when you do your chore." I stood so fast the chair hit the wall. The window in my apartment faced an air shaft. There was no balcony, no ledge wide enough for a person, no fire escape. I lived on the 5th floor, and the only thing outside that glass should have been brick, rain, and the ugly backs of other people's bathrooms. I grabbed the curtain and yanked it shut. Something on the other side tapped twice. I stayed in the center of the room until the rain softened. That was my first pattern. Not proof, exactly, but pattern. The tapping only happened while rain touched the window. When the rain thinned to mist, the apartment went still. When it stopped, my phone lost the photo thread entirely. Not deleted. Gone. Like the conversation had never existed. I slept badly and woke up angry. Anger is useful in the morning. It lets you call yourself stupid instead of scared. I made coffee, opened the adoption packet again, and went through every page like a job. There were placement notes, home assessments, rainfall logs, a handwritten caseworker summary that seemed normal until certain sentences bent sideways. The Vale family presents as stable during measurable rain. Home remains unavailable for inspection in dry weather. Candidate should be introduced gradually through window tasks. Do not permit candidate to enter the dry room until wet household bond is complete. One page had been stamped, returned to weather. Another was stamped, child refused, during drought. The packet ended with a modern PDF that did not match the old scans. Its metadata showed it had been created the night before, while I was sitting at my desk. The file was called chore_confirmation. It contained one sentence. Candidate view chart during active rainfall. At the bottom was a box for my signature. It was already signed. I stared at that signature for a long time. It was mine in the most insulting way possible. Not just my name. My rushed version, the lazy slant, the first letter bigger than it needed to be, the loop I only made when signing delivery screens. I checked my hands, like that would tell me where they had been. By noon, I'd convinced myself this was targeted fraud. Someone had my identity, my signature, maybe old school records. I called my mother, trying to sound casual, and asked whether there had ever been any adoption paperwork around me. She laughed, then stopped when I did not laugh with her. What kind of question is that? A weird job sent me a file. Do not open weird files. Too late. She got quiet in the way parents get quiet when they are deciding whether to tell the truth or the version of the truth that fits in a phone call. You hated rain when you were little, she said. I had not asked that. She said when I was 3 or 4, I would stand at the living room window during storms and cry because the other house wanted me to come help. She thought it was imaginary. Then one summer, during a week of storms, I vanished from our apartment for almost 2 hours. The police found me 3 blocks away, dry as a bone, standing in front of an empty lot. You kept saying they forgot your boots, she said. I asked what empty lot. She gave me the intersection, Venable and Cross. Before I went there, I tried one normal door. That is another thing fear does. It makes you bargain with ordinary officers. If one fluorescent lit counter can tell you a file is fake, maybe the house goes back to being a house on a screen. The County Family Services office was downtown, in a concrete building that looked like it had been designed to make everyone speak quietly. I brought the printed adoption packet in a grocery bag because I did not want the rain touching it. The sky outside had gone low and bruised, but the storm had not broken yet. The woman at the records desk asked for a case number. I gave her the one from the packet. She typed it in, frowned, typed it again, and said, "That format is too old. Can you check legacy records?" Not without a request form. I slid the adoption page through the slot. "Please." She looked at the paper, and I watched the professional irritation leave her face. Not all at once. It drained out slowly, like water from a sink. Her eyes moved from the county seal to my birth date to the phrase present during rainfall only. Then she pushed the page back without touching the name line. "Where did you get this? A transcription job?" "No. Where did it come from before that?" "I don't know." She stood up and walked to a door behind the counter. Through the glass, I saw her speak to a man in a tie. He looked over at me, then at the windows. The first drop of rain hit the glass behind him and ran down in a crooked line. The lights flickered. The records clerk came back with a clipboard. "Fill this out," she said. The form was a standard public records request, except someone had already stamped "denied" across the bottom in purple ink. The date on the denial was tomorrow. I looked up at her. She said very softly, "Do not say the last name in here." That was the first time someone else treated the file like a thing with ears. I wrote only the case number. While I was writing, rain began tapping the office windows. The old printer behind the counter woke up by itself. It made the grinding, coughing sound of a machine that hated being useful, then printed one page. The clock did not move. The man in the tie backed away from the printer. I could read the header upside down from where I stood. Supplemental Wet Placement Index. The clock whispered, "No." The printer spat out another page, then another. On each one, I saw names, dates, weather conditions, and chore assignments. Some children had been placed with the Vale family for one storm, some for a season. Some were marked returned dry. Some were marked retained during weather. A few had one final note beside them, forgotten by household after drought. My page printed lost. Candidate recovered by dry parents after unauthorized threshold visit. Dry father filed objection. Objection period expired upon father's death. I did not realize I had stopped breathing until the clock said, "Sir." Her hand hovered over the page, not touching it. "Leave it," the man in the tie said from the back. The clock ignored him. She tore the page from the printer and folded it with shaking fingers. "Listen to me," she said. "If they have a chore for you, they have a place for you. Chores are how they keep rooms from closing. If you do the chore once inside, the house can list you as participating." "How do you know that?" She looked toward the rain-dark window. "My aunt was on one of those pages. We were told she ran away. She comes back in family photos when it storms." The man in the tie said her name sharply. The clerk slid the folded index page under the counter slot. "Do not sign anything wet," she said. "Do not eat in the house. Do not sit at the table. And if you see a door with dry air under it, do not open it because someone is crying inside." The office windows rattled. At first, I thought it was thunder. Then I saw 4 small handprints appear on the outside of the glass, high up where no child could reach from the sidewalk. They moved together, left to right, as if children were walking along the outside of the 3rd floor window. The printer started again. This time, it printed a chore chart. The names were the Vale children, then mine. The new chore beside the clock's name was Return Borrowed Page. The clock saw it and went white. I grabbed the folded index and ran before the man in the tie could unlock the counter door. In the stairwell, the rain sound followed me through the concrete. Not outside the building, inside the walls, like pipes bursting very far away. Halfway down, my phone buzzed with a message from the unknown number. "You are teaching officers to remember us." The lobby security guard looked up as I passed. For 1 second, his face softened with recognition, and I thought he was going to help me. Instead, he said, "Your mother is waiting by the car." I looked through the lobby glass. Across the street, in the rain that had not reached the sidewalk yet, Lydia Vale stood beside a station wagon from another decade. 4 children sat inside it, blurred behind wet windows. 1 empty seat waited in the middle row. I left through the service exit and cut behind the building until the storm slackened. The folded index page stayed dry in my pocket. I knew it. Everyone in the neighborhood knew it. It had been empty for years. A fenced rectangle of cracked asphalt and weeds between a laundromat and a closed tax office. People used it for parking during street fairs. Nobody built there because the ground flooded whenever it rained. The next rain was forecast for that evening. I told myself I was going to look at a vacant lot, not enter a haunted adoption. That is the kind of sentence fear lets you build when it needs you to keep moving. I took the bus before sunset with my phone charged, a pocket flashlight, and the adoption packet printed in a folder. It was dry when I left my apartment. The sky had that green-gray look it gets before a serious storm, but the sidewalks were still clean. Venable and Cross looked exactly like I remembered. Laundromat humming on one side, tax office windows papered over on the other, chain link fence around the lot, a warped sign that said Future Mixed Use Development, which had been lying there long enough to become funny. I stood across the street with my folder under my arm and felt ridiculous. Then the first drops fell. They hit the asphalt inside the fence and did not splash. They stuck. Each drop darkened the ground in a perfect circle. More circles appeared, touching, overlapping, joining into lines. The lines became the outline of a walkway, then steps, then porch railings, then the pale front of a narrow white house with blue trim, rising through the rain like a photograph developing in a tray. Cars passed through it until the rain thickened. Then they went around, not swerving, not panicking, just adjusting in that small, unconscious way people adjust around construction cones and delivery vans. Nobody looked twice. The chain link fence was gone. The Vale house stood in the lot with all its windows lit. I should have left. I know how often that sentence shows up in stories like this, and I know how useless it is. Nobody leaves the first time reality opens a door for them. They stand there trying to understand the hinge. The front door opened. A woman stepped onto the porch. She wore a green cardigan over a long house dress, and the rain did not flatten her hair. It ran over her like she was behind invisible glass. She looked maybe 40, maybe older, maybe the age a mother is when you are a child and never really recalculates afterward. "You're late," she called. I did not answer. She smiled with tired affection, not the wide photo smile. "That's all right. First days are messy." The porch hook beside her held a yellow raincoat. My name was written above it. I backed away into the laundromat doorway and called my mother. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. Then the unknown number texted me. "Do not bring dry family to wet placement." The woman on the porch tilted her head as if she had heard the text arrive. "Come in before you soak," she said. "Who are you?" "You have the papers." "Papers can be fake." She looked genuinely hurt by that. "So can dry memories." The rain intensified. Water ran along the curb and filled the gutter. The house became sharper. I could see lace curtains, porch scratches. A child's bike tipped against the steps. The blue trim was peeling in one corner. The smell of dinner drifted out, warm and oniony, so ordinary it made the whole thing cruel. Behind the woman, 4 children appeared in the hall. Elise, Rowan, Peter, June. I knew them from the file before I knew their faces. They lined up in descending height, all wearing socks on the wood floor, all watching me with the solemn interest of kids meeting a new cousin they have been told to be nice to. The smallest girl raised one hand. The mother said, "June, don't wave through threshold rain." June lowered her hand. I asked what threshold rain was, because apparently terror does not stop you from being socially trained to respond. The mother smiled again. "The kind that lets a house make decisions." A bus hissed past behind me. Its windows showed only the empty lot. That broke something in me. Not my courage, my patience. I crossed the street, stopping just short of the porch steps. Why is my name in your file? Because you were placed. I have a family. Most children do, at first. I pulled the chore chart from the folder and held it up under the awning of the laundromat so the rain would not ruin it. Why am I on this? For the first time, the children looked afraid. The father appeared behind them. Thomas Vale was tall and narrow, with sleeves rolled to the elbows and a dish towel over one shoulder. He had the patient expression of a man who has decided patience is the same as kindness. That chart is for inside the house, he said. The rain came down hard enough to blur the street. You should not have taken it out. The printed chore chart in my hand softened. Ink ran from the names in thin colored streams. Not all the names, only mine. My name slipped down the page like it was made of syrup, reached the bottom edge, and dropped onto the wet sidewalk. The letters did not dissolve. They crawled toward the porch. I stepped back so fast, I nearly fell into the street. The mother clicked her tongue. Now we have to write you again. I ran. The rain followed me for 3 blocks. That is not a metaphor. I passed under awnings, and water still struck my shoulders. I cut through the covered bus stop, and rain came down inside it in a perfect square around me. People stared and moved away. By the time I reached the subway stairs, my shoes were full of water, and the folder had gone soft under my arm. Underground, the rain stopped. My phone buzzed. Chore incomplete. That was when I noticed the inside of the subway window beside me. The train was not moving yet, and the dark glass reflected the platform. My reflection looked soaked and terrified. Behind it, in the glass, the Vale children stood in a line. June pressed both hands to the window and mouthed something. I leaned closer before I remembered the file. Keep youngest away from dry door. June was not asking me to come in. She was saying, don't open it. I spent that night in a motel with no exterior window, one of those cheap interior rooms that smell like old smoke under cleaning spray. I put towels under the door because rainwater kept creeping in from the hallway, even though the hallway was dry. I called my mother until she answered. This time, she told me the rest. When I disappeared as a kid, the officers found me at Venable and Cross during a storm, but I was not alone. A woman stood across the lot calling me by a name my mother had almost given me before changing it at the hospital. The woman said I had missed dinner. By the time the police crossed the street, the rain eased and the woman was gone. I thought she was some sick person, my mother said. I thought she had followed us. Then the social worker came. What social worker? A man from county services. He said there had been a clerical mix-up with a foster placement file. He had papers with your name on them. I remember because they were damp. He said if anyone contacted us about adoption, we should refuse in writing. Did you? Your father did. 3 times. My father died when I was 12, and I had spent 20 years thinking I knew all the useful things about him. Apparently, one of the things he had done was write letters to a family that only appeared in rain, telling them they could not have me. My mother still had copies in a shoebox. She sent photos. The letters were short, angry, and wet-stained around the edges. To whom it may concern, our child is not available for placement under any weather condition. The last one was dated 2 months before he died. under his signature, in a different hand, someone had written, "Dry father objection noted. Reassess after loss." I did not cry. That came later, in a parking lot, over something much smaller. In the motel room, I felt the flat, useful rage that makes you open every file again. The adoption packet had changed. The family photo now included the porch hook, with my raincoat removed. On the chore chart, my name had been rewritten. Wipe windows from inside. Apologize to mother. Do not speak to dry mother during rain. There was also a new page, a floor plan of the Vell house, drawn in blue pencil. Kitchen, parlor, stairs, children's room, parents' room, laundry porch. At the back of the hallway was a blank rectangle labeled dry room. Somebody had circled it 6 times. I zoomed in and found writing so small it looked like dirt. Return children stored until rain. The motel lost power at 3:12 a.m. The emergency lights in the hallway came on red. Rain hammered the roof. My room phone rang. I had not given anyone the room number. I let it ring until the sound became worse than answering. "Front desk," a man said. "Your family is here." I hung up and shoved the dresser in front of the door. The room phone rang again. This time, when I picked up, a little girl whispered, "Please don't let him put you in the dry room." "June, you remember my name?" The relief in her voice hurt more than the fear. She told me the family had not always been wrong. That was how she put it. The house started as a place for children who had nowhere safe to go during storms, back when storms took roofs and roads and parents. The Veils kept them warm, fed, dry. Then one drought lasted too long, and the family learned how to keep itself together by tying chores to children. "If nobody does the chores, the house forgets rooms," June whispered. "What is the dry room?" She went quiet. On the other side of my motel door, someone knocked once. June whispered, "Where they keep the ones who stop raining." The knock came again. "June, are you in there?" The mother called from the hallway, sweet as a bedtime check. "Don't bother your new brother," I said. "I'm not your brother." The hallway went silent. When the mother spoke again, her voice came through the wall beside the bed. "Not yet." The wallpaper bubbled. Water pushed through in thin lines, tracing the shape of a refrigerator door. Magnets appeared first. A grocery list. A child's drawing of a house under a dark cloud. Then the chore chart, laminated and bright, slid into view as if the wall had become the Veil kitchen. My name was on it, in fresh red marker. For the first time, I understood the chore. Wipe windows from inside did not mean clean glass. It meant erase the boundary from the house side so the rain could see out clearly, so it could find the next person, the next dry room, the next family willing to forget. I grabbed the motel Bible from the nightstand, tore out the blank pages in the back, and used them to blot the red marker off the wall chart. It was a stupid, desperate move, but the ink smeared. In the hallway, the mother screamed, not in pain, in frustration. The door handle rattled. I ran to the bathroom. No window, no mirror, because I had taken it down earlier and laid it face down in the tub. I climbed onto the toilet tank and punched at the ceiling tile until it cracked. I am not an action person. I bruised my knuckles, cursed, slipped, and nearly broke my ankle. But fear will teach you architecture quickly. The maintenance space above the bathroom led over the next room. I crawled through dust and insulation while the Veil father spoke below me in a calm voice, telling the children to set bowls under the leaks. I dropped into an empty room, ran through its door, and made it to the stairwell. Rain filled the stairwell from the bottom up, not floodwater. Falling rain inside the enclosed concrete shaft, pouring from nowhere, making each flight below me look farther away. On the landing beneath, June stood in her yellow raincoat. "This way," she said. I did not trust her. She saw that and nodded like she did not blame me. "If I wanted you inside, I would call you by the name on the hook." That stopped me. "What name?" She looked down at the rising rain. "The one your dry mother changed." Then she opened the stairwell door behind her. It did not lead to the motel hallway. It led to the Vale kitchen. The family sat at the table, Thomas at one end, Lydia at the other, Elise, Rowan, and Peter along the sides, hands folded. There was one empty chair. Behind it, the chore chart hung on the refrigerator, my name half smeared from the motel wall. June stood beside me, trembling. Lydia smiled. "There you are." The rain in the stairwell climbed another step. I could go down into impossible rain or forward into the house that had been reaching for me since I was a child. I chose forward because June whispered, "The chart is paper." That was the whole plan. I stepped into the Vale kitchen and grabbed the chore chart. Thomas rose so fast his chair fell over. "Chores are not optional." "Then do them yourself." I tore the chart in half. The house groaned, not like wood settling, like a throat trying to remember speech. The children screamed. Lydia lunged at me, and for one moment she looked exactly like a tired mother whose kid had broken something important. That almost froze me. Then her fingers reached my wrist and passed through the skin like cold rain through cloth. The chart halves bled red marker onto the linoleum. June grabbed one half and shoved it into the sink disposal. "Switch!" she yelled. I did not know what that meant until Elise jumped up and turned on the tap. Water roared into the sink. Rowan hit the disposal switch. The motor screamed, choked, and dragged the laminated paper down in ragged strips. Peter grabbed the other half from my hand and stuffed it under the gas burner. The flame burned blue, then green, then bright white. The house forgot the dining room first. The far wall vanished. Rain poured through blackness. Thomas reached for Peter, but his arm blurred at the elbow. Lydia called the children's names in order, trying to fix them by routine. Elise, Rowan, Peter, June, then mine. Not the name I use. The hospital name my mother had changed, the one on the hook. For 1 second, I remembered a yellow coat, warm soup, a hallway that smelled like wet wool, and a woman's hand wiping rain from my forehead. It was not a false memory. That was worse. False memories can be rejected. This one had roots. June slapped me hard. "Dry name," she said. "Say your dry name." I did. The kitchen window shattered inward. Outside was not the street, or the lot, or the motel. It was every rain I had ever watched from inside. My childhood living room, school bus glass, office windows, car windshields, the air shaft outside my apartment. Through all of them, the Vale house had been looking back, waiting for enough water to make a door. The children ran for the window. Thomas tried to block them, but Rowan kicked his knee with the practiced speed of a kid who had thought about doing it for years. Elise pulled Peter through. June shoved me after them. I hit wet asphalt hard enough to scrape both palms. The empty lot lay around us. Rain hammered the ground. The Vale house flickered behind us, half there, half outline, blue trim running like paint. Lydia stood on the porch with one hand on the railing and the other over her mouth, not screaming now. For a second, she looked lonely. Then the roof caved inward without making a sound. The rain stopped. The children were gone, not vanished in a flash, just absent, the way the house was absent. The lot was fenced again. Cars passed normally. A man under an umbrella yelled at me for lying in a puddle. In my hand was a scrap of laminated chore chart. It had one line left: wipe windows from inside. The name beside it was blank. I went to my mother's house as soon as buses started running. She opened the door and looked older than she had on any video call. I handed her the scrap. She did not ask where I got it. She took it to the kitchen, opened the junk drawer, and pulled out my father's old letters. Every refusal letter was dry now. The damp stains were gone. Under his last signature, the reassess after loss note had been crossed out. In its place, in a child's handwriting, someone had written, "Released during heavy rain." My mother cried then, and I finally did too, but not for the reason I expected. I cried because I remembered June's face when she realized I knew her name. I cried because part of me missed a house that had tried to steal me. That is the ugliest part of this. The Vales were not only monsters. They had dinner on. They had hooks by the door. They knew the name my parents almost gave me. That kind of wrongness does not leave cleanly. The hidden board banned my account the next day. The reason given was placement interference. I thought that meant it was over until the first clear afternoon after the storm. I was at home, cleaning everything the rain had touched. My curtains were open. Sunlight came through my apartment window. I remember feeling stupidly proud of that, like uncovered glass was proof of recovery. Then I saw the chore chart on my refrigerator. I do not own a chore chart. It was not laminated anymore. It was notebook paper, held up by my own souvenir magnet from a beach trip I barely remember. Down the left side were names I did not know: Elise, Rowan, Peter, June. Then a blank line. Across the top were new chores: keep towels by the door, boil soup when thunder starts, tell dry children not to answer porch calls, wipe windows from outside. My name was not written anywhere. That should have comforted me. Instead, I noticed the last chore had already been checked off. Outside my window, on a dry pane 5 floors above the air shaft, a small wet handprint slid slowly down the glass. I bought a dark web maintenance manual for the storm drains, and the first rule says, never answer your echo. I used to think the scariest thing under a city was whatever people imagined lived there: giant rats, old tunnels, sealed rooms, lost workers, all the usual stories people tell when they want the pavement to feel thinner. After what happened to me, I think the worst thing under a city is maintenance, not the workers, the habit, the way a city can keep doing something long after everyone who understood it is retired, dead, or pretending they never signed the form. You see a storm drain and think water goes in, water comes out somewhere else. Simple. The city sees mouths, gates, overflow decisions, old calls, return sound, and 100 little rules. Nobody teaches the new guy, because the new guy is not supposed to go that deep. I was not the new guy, exactly. I was a building maintenance contractor, which means I was qualified to fix 3 things badly and lie politely about the 4th until a real specialist came. I handled sump pumps, clogged roof drains, tenant leaks, basement smells, all the wet annoyances landlords hated paying actual plumbers for. The manual was supposed to make me better at that. That is the embarrassing part. I did not buy it because I wanted to explore tunnels. I did not buy it because I believed in anything. I bought it because a condo board on Marlow Avenue had hired me to figure out why their garage flooded every time the rain came hard from the west, and the city kept telling them the storm line was not their problem. The city was probably right. The condo board did not care. I searched regular databases first, drainage maps, public works, PDFs, old planning documents with scans so bad the street names looked like they had been underwater already. Nothing matched the pipes in that garage. There was an extra grate along the back wall, one nobody had on any plan, and when I poured dye down it, the color never appeared in the outlet behind the building. That was how I ended up on a dark web listing for a complete storm drain maintenance manual, district underlayers, pre-consolidation edition. It had one photo, a thick black binder on concrete, wet around the edges, with a city department sticker half peeled off the spine. The seller called himself Catch Basin. No ratings, no description except original crew rules included. Do not digitize out loud. That should have been enough weirdness for me to close the page. Instead, I bought it. 2 days later, the binder was waiting outside my apartment door in a clear plastic evidence bag. No postage, no knock. My hallway camera showed nothing but a 1-second smear of rain across the lens, even though the hallway was indoors and the weather outside had been dry all afternoon. The binder smelled like wet concrete. Inside were city maps, maintenance schedules, inspection diagrams, and a rule sheet printed on yellowing paper. The first page had a title in block letters, Field Rules for Underdrain Personnel. Rule 1 was underlined 3 times in pencil. Never answer your echo. I remember reading that and smiling because it sounded like something written by a foreman who had spent too many nights in a tunnel with guys who thought yelling was comedy. The rest of the rules sounded normal enough at first. Do not enter during active rainfall. Mark every gate before crossing. Keep one dry voice above ground. Do not follow water that runs uphill. Do not permit your radio to repeat you. By the time I reached that one, I was not smiling as much. There were handwritten notes in the margins from at least 3 different people. Most were practical. Gate wheel stuck. Use left ladder. Right ladder rusted through. Map wrong past Jefferson Spur. Then, on page 6, beside a diagram of a round junction chamber, someone had written, Echo takes shape if acknowledged. Under that, in a darker pen, it only needs 1 word. The Marlow garage flooded again the next morning. I took the binder because I am exactly the kind of person who brings cursed paperwork to a job if the cursed paperwork has a better pipe diagram. Rain had hammered the city before dawn, and the garage smelled like gasoline, wet cardboard, and that mineral stink storm water leaves behind when it carries half a street indoors. The condo board president met me at the ramp in dress shoes he clearly regretted wearing. I will call him Mr. Pell. He did not deserve what happened, but he did deserve a little embarrassment for standing ankle deep in brown water and asking whether I could just shop vac the situation. I told him the drain line was not mapped. He asked if I had a plan. I lifted the binder. Old City Manual. Is that official? It's old. That satisfied him, which tells you everything about condo boards. The extra grate along the back wall sat under a layer of floating leaves. I cleared it with a hook and found a square service plate beside it, painted the same grey as the floor. The manual had that exact plate in a fold-out map. On public records, the back wall was solid concrete. In the binder, a thin blue line ran behind it, labeled M17 Return Run. There was a note beside the label: "Do not call into this run." The plate bolts came loose too easily. When I lifted it, damp air breathed up from below. Not a smell exactly, more like a basement exhaling after years of holding its mouth shut. Mr. Pell leaned over my shoulder. "Hello," he called. The manual slipped in my wet hand. His voice dropped into the opening, bounced once, and came back. "Hello." Only it did not come back like an echo. It came back level, close, and annoyed, as if somebody under the garage had answered from just out of sight. Mr. Pell laughed. "Good acoustics." The voice below laughed too. Not louder, not softer. Exactly his laugh, copied with a half-second delay and one tiny mistake at the end, like it forgot when to stop. I grabbed Mr. Pell's sleeve and pulled him back. "Do not talk into the drain." He looked at me like I had made the day less convenient, which was his deepest category of insult. "It's an echo." The voice below said, "It's an echo." Mr. Pell's face changed. That was the first time I saw a person understand a rule after breaking it. I put the service plate back and told him I needed to check the outlet from the street. He wanted to argue, but the water in the garage began moving towards the open grate against the slope of the floor. It gathered itself in a slow, thin sheet and slid backward, uphill, under the wall. Rule 4. Do not follow water that runs uphill. I left. I know that sounds abrupt, but sometimes survival is just disappointing a client quickly. In my truck, with rain dripping from my hair onto the steering wheel, I opened the binder again. The M17 return run map had changed. I do not mean I had missed something. The page was wet now, though it had been dry in the garage. Blue ink had spread from the line behind Marlowe Avenue into a branching diagram that had not been there before. It ran under 3 blocks, under my usual coffee place, under a school playground, under my apartment building. At the end of the new line, someone had written my name, not in old pencil, in fresh black ink, still glossy. I shut the binder so hard the metal ring snapped at my finger. My phone rang. Unknown number. I did not answer. The voicemail notification appeared anyway. The message was 6 seconds long. I played it on speaker before thinking. My own voice came out, faint and wet. "Yeah?" That was all. Just me saying, "Yeah," like I had answered someone in another room. The problem was that I had not said it that day. Not on the job, not in the truck, not to Mr. Pell. I replayed it 3 times, because apparently my survival instincts had taken the morning off. On the 3rd replay, another sound came after my voice. A drip. Then a second version of me, farther away, whispered, "Louder." I threw the phone onto the passenger seat and sat there until a driver behind me honked. The rational explanation had a short life. Maybe the voicemail was spoofed. Maybe somebody from the hidden market had planted audio. Maybe the manual had reactive ink. Maybe Mr. Pell had a weird drain and a sense of humor. I built each explanation, looked at it, and watched it collapse under the weight of the map with my name at the end of it. Back at my apartment, I searched the binder page by page. The maps were organized by district, but not by current names. They used older terms: underlayers, return mouths, throat chambers, dry voice posts. Some pages had formal diagrams. Others looked like emergency editions, sketched by someone who had learned the tunnels by fear. One page listed core procedures. Crew leader speaks once from dry post. Crew below repeats assigned phrase. If phrase returns before crew response, all personnel exit. If echo uses unassigned name, all personnel exit. If echo asks question, silence is mandatory. Do not comfort voices below waterline. The last rule had been circled. I went back to the hidden listing. The market page had changed. The binder was no longer for sale, and my order history did not show a price anymore. It showed a work status. Manual accepted. Technician active. There was a support link underneath, which would have been funny if I had not been sitting alone in my apartment with the sink drain clicking every few minutes like a tongue against teeth. I opened it. The support page was a dead forum thread from years earlier, preserved in a gray text archive. The title was M17 Return Mouth Passed to Private Contractor. Most of the posts were from users with names like Sump Ghost, Outfall 66, and Bellmouth. They talked in the flat, practical tone of people discussing a dangerous tool they hated but still knew how to use. One post explained that the manuals were not manuals in the normal sense. They were assignments. The city had printed them for crews who maintained the underdrain system before the districts consolidated. Every binder was tied to a dry voice post above ground. One person stayed up top and spoke only assigned phrases. The crew below answered with matching phrases, so the system knew which voices belonged to living workers and which voices had been returned by the drains. Then, according to the thread, the drains learned the procedure. Returned voices began answering before the crews could. Supervisors rewrote the core rules. Then, the returned voices learned the new rules too. Eventually, the only safe call was no call, and the only safe technician was someone who could read the old maps without saying what they saw. That was the theory, anyway. The last page of the thread was just incident logs. 1987, Jefferson Spur. Worker heard his wife crying below waterline. Responded verbally. Retrieved alive. Voice delayed by 3 seconds until death. 1992, Mason outfall. 2-person crew heard third crew member ahead. Followed footsteps. Returned through separate grate. 40 minutes later, both insisting the other one was still below. 2004, M17 return run. Dry voice post failed during storm. Manual reassigned outside department. That last line had a reply under it from Catch Basin, the seller. Once a manual leaves the city, it keeps looking for hands. I typed into the archived reply box, even though the thread looked dead. How do I return it? The answer appeared before I hit send. Complete maintenance or transfer assignment. I typed. What maintenance? This time, the page took longer. The letters appeared one at a time, as if someone were typing through water. Close listening gate, before return. Mouth reaches fixtures. I looked toward my kitchen sink. The drain clicked once. I typed. What happens if it reaches fixtures? A photograph loaded. It was my apartment building from the alley, taken during rain. Every window was dark except mine. In the lower corner, beside the trash bins, a storm drain grate reflected my desk lamp, even though there was no line of sight from the alley to my room. Under the photograph, Catch Basin had written, "Then above ground becomes below enough." The support page refreshed again. A new file appeared, labeled Field Audio Examples. I did not download it. The browser downloaded it anyway. The first audio clip was a man shouting into a culvert, "You good?" The response came back in his voice. You good? Then the same voice, softer. No. The second clip was a woman laughing in a tunnel. Her laugh returned with a second laugh, tucked inside it, deeper and older, wearing the first like a coat. The third clip was silent for 14 seconds. Then my own voicemail voice said, Yeah? That file had been created 3 minutes earlier. I closed the laptop and sat very still. The binder on my table gave off a soft cracking sound as new ink dried on one of the maps. I thought of Mr. Pell laughing into the service opening. I called him. No answer. I called the condo office. The receptionist said he had gone back to the garage with a flashlight because he thought he left his keys down there. She sounded annoyed, not scared. The way people sound when someone else's bad choice is becoming their afternoon. I drove back through rain that seemed to hit every light red before I reached it. The garage gate was open. Water covered the floor again, but not deep. Mr. Pell's dress shoes sat neatly beside the service plate. The plate was open. From below, his voice called. I found them. I stood at the edge of the opening with the binder hugged against my chest. His keys were on the floor beside the grate. Mr. Pell, I said. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I had done the wrong thing. Not because the manual flashed or the lights went out, because the drain went quiet in a way that felt satisfied. Something below me answered in Mr. Pell's voice. Yeah? Then in mine. Mr. Pell? The two voices overlapped, practiced, adjusted. My phone started ringing in my pocket. Unknown number. The ringtone echoed from the open service plate at the same time, note for note, half a second late. I backed away without picking up the keys. The garage emergency lights flickered. In every puddle on the floor, I saw the same round tunnel from the manual. Brick walls, black water, a ladder descending farther than the building had height. At the bottom, a man in dress pants stood, with his head tilted back, waiting for me to say something else. I got out and called 911 from the sidewalk. I said a man might be trapped in a storm drain. The dispatcher asked whether I could hear him. I looked at the open garage ramp. From inside, Mr. Pell's voice called my name. The dispatcher repeated, Can you hear him? The manual was on the passenger seat, open to a page I did not remember turning to. If public emergency line request confirmation, do not confirm by voice. I hung up. That was not noble. It felt awful. It still feels awful. I left a man down there, or something using a man's voice, because a moldy binder told me not to answer a dispatcher. 5 minutes later, fire trucks came anyway. I stayed across the street in my truck and watched responders enter the garage. They came out with Mr. Pell 20 minutes later, soaked, shivering, alive. He had a cut over one eye and no shoes. When a paramedic asked his name, he answered normally. Then the paramedic asked what happened. Mr. Pell looked past him, straight at me across the street, and smiled with my mouth. I drove away before he could speak. By evening, the condo board sent a building-wide email calling it a drainage-related medical incident. That phrase did a lot of work. It covered the missing shoes, the cut over his eye, the fact that nobody could explain how he had gotten below the garage slab, and the security clip that showed him walking toward the service plate twice. The first time, he was alone. The second time, something wearing my shape walked beside him. The clip was only 5 seconds long. The board president's assistant sent it to me by accident. then called 30 seconds later and begged me to delete it. In the video, my copy never looked at the camera. It kept its head tilted down, listening to the open drain. At the end, Mr. Pell asked the copy a question I could not hear. The copy turned toward him. The audio glitched. Then my recorded voice said, "Yeah?" After that, the video showed an empty garage. The binder updated while I was watching. A new note appeared beside M17 return run. First answer accepted. Secondary speaker pending. That night, the city flooded. Not officially. Officially, we had localized ponding, temporary drainage overload, and 3 underpass closures. On the ground, every curb became a throat. Every gutter made a steady pulling sound. The drains outside my apartment took water so fast they formed little funnels, and every funnel sounded like someone quietly breathing in. I did not sleep. At 2:17 a.m., someone knocked on my apartment door. Not with knuckles, with a tool. 3 metallic taps. Pause. 2 taps. I looked through the peephole. No one stood in the hallway. The taps came again, but lower, near the floor. I crouched and saw water seeping under the threshold in 2 thin streams. The streams separated, curved, and formed letters on the floor. Open dry post. The binder lay on my table. It had opened by itself. A new page had appeared behind the rule sheet, clipped in with metal rings that had not been there before. It was a work order. Dry voice. Post failure. Location. My apartment address. Assigned technician. Me. Issue. Echo has reached above ground fixture. Recommended action. Descend to M17. Return run. And close listening gate. There was a signature line at the bottom. Mr. Pell had signed it. Under his signature, in smaller wet letters, was a note. He answered first, but you answered back. The kitchen sink gurgled. I turned slowly. The sink basin was dry. From the drain, my own voice whispered, "Yeah?" I packed the binder, a headlamp, knee boots, a crowbar, and the kind of little handheld radio I used on job sites. Then I called someone who knew more about water than I did. Her name is Nina. She ran a drain cleaning crew I subcontracted for sometimes, and she had the rare gift of being able to tell when a story was insane and still ask useful questions. I did not tell her everything on the phone. I said I had an old map showing an unmapped return line under Marlow and a missing client who had come back wrong. She said, "Wrong how?" From my kitchen sink, my voice said, "Wrong how?" I hung up. Nina arrived 20 minutes later with a truck full of equipment and a face like she had already decided I was an idiot, but not yet decided how much. I met her outside. Rain misted under the streetlights. I handed her the rule sheet before I said hello. She read Rule 1. Never answer your echo. Do not read it out loud. She looked at me over the page. From the storm drain at the curb, her voice repeated, "Never answer your echo." Nina stopped smiling. We went to Marlow because that was where the M17 run opened widest. I wanted police, city crews, somebody with authority. The binder had a whole section explaining why that would make it worse. Public crews used radios. Public crews shouted. Public crews confirmed names. The storm system had been built around call and response long before anyone realized something down there was keeping the calls. Nina did not like any part of that. So the plan is we go into the evil drain quietly. We close the listening gate. And you know where that is because of the evil drain book. Yes, great. Love that. Very professional. Her sarcasm helped more than sympathy would have. We opened the service plate in the garage at 3:08 a.m. Water moved around our boots, but did not enter the hole. It circled the rim, patient and black. Nina clipped a safety line to the bumper of her truck and handed me the end. She used hand signals after that. No radio, no callouts, no names. The ladder below the plate was colder than the air. I climbed down first. The tunnel at the bottom was round, brick-lined, and too clean. That was the detail that bothered me. Storm drains are not clean. They collect leaves, wrappers, grit, oil, needles, tennis balls, every little thing the street gives up. This run looked swept. The water along the bottom was only ankle deep and moved against the direction marked on the map. Nina dropped down behind me, boots hitting with a soft splash. The sound went forward. Then it came back. Splash, not an echo, a reply. Nina's hand found my shoulder and squeezed once. We followed the binder map by a headlamp. The tunnel branched every 40 feet, and each branch had a metal tag. M17A, M17B, return spur, dry voice access. Some tags were new. Some were so old the letters had softened under mineral deposits. At each junction, the manual had a rule written in the margin. Do not step where your light returns before you turn. Do not count drips after 12. Do not touch dry brick below waterline. If you hear your own footsteps ahead, stop walking. We stopped twice. Both times, my footsteps continued ahead without me. The first time, they faded. The second time, they stopped too. Then, from the darkness ahead, my voice whispered, "Keep up." Nina pointed at the rule sheet tucked in my jacket and made a cutting motion across her throat. Silence. We kept moving. At the third junction, the tunnel widened into a chamber with a round ceiling and 5 gates set into the walls. Old maintenance hooks hung from chains. A painted sign read, "Listening Gate. Access. Authorized crew only." Below it, someone had added in marker, "All crews authorized eventually." The binder said the gate was behind the center panel. We found the wheel, rusted but movable. Nina sprayed it with lubricant. The smell filled the chamber, sharp and chemical. She gestured for me to turn while she braced the gate. I put both hands on the wheel. From the tunnel behind us, Nina's voice said, "Wait." I froze. The real Nina was in front of me. She shook her head slowly. The voice behind us said, "He's going to close me in here." Nina's eyes changed, not because she believed it, because the voice had used her exact tone when she was trying not to panic. I turned the wheel. The gate screamed. Water surged around our boots. The chamber lights, which had not existed a second before, flickered on overhead. Not electric lights, reflections. Hundreds of small, wavering reflections appeared on the wet brick, each showing a different storm drain, opening somewhere above the city. Through one, I saw my apartment sink from below. Through another, the curb outside Marlowe. Through another, the condo garage, where Mr. Pell stood barefoot in the water, speaking to firefighters with my mouth and Nina's eyes. The listening gate opened 6 inches. Behind it was not machinery. It was a vertical shaft full of voices. They were layered so tightly they became pressure. "Hello. Down here. You okay? Can you hear me? Yeah. Say that again." The harmless phrases people call into drains, basements, tunnels, stairwells, all packed together, kept wet, kept ready. Then every voice stopped. My father's voice said my name. That is a cheap trick when a haunting does it in a movie. Down there, in that chamber, it was not cheap. It was accurate. My father had been dead 9 years. His voice had a rasp from smoking and a little upward pull when he asked a question. The drain had both. I knew the rule. If echo asks question, silence is mandatory. My father's voice said, "You still mad at me?" I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. Nina grabbed my sleeve and pulled me back to the wheel. We turned together. The gate opened wider, and the shaft exhaled warm air. The binder had said close the listening gate. It had not said what open meant. I looked at the diagram again and realized I had read it upside down. The wheel did not close the gate. It opened the mouth. Behind us, the tunnel filled with footsteps. Nina saw the diagram at the same time I did. She shoved me away from the wheel and slammed her shoulder into the gate, trying to force it back. Something inside the shaft laughed with Mr. Pell's voice, then mine, then hers. The safety line snapped tight. Something had it from behind. Nina's truck, 3 stories above us, lurched hard enough that the line sang through the tunnel. The hook on her harness bent. She made one small sound, not a word, just pain, and the shaft answered with the same sound. That counted. I saw it in the water. Her reflection blinked out of sync. "No," I said. The tunnel said, "No." 1 word. It only needs 1 word. Nina looked at me, furious and terrified, because now I had done it too. The binder fell from my jacket into the water and opened to a page that had not existed before. Emergency correction. If listening gate is opened by mistake, provide false dry voice at nearest post. Echo will follow. Confirmed speaker. Do not use a living voice. The nearest dry voice post was marked on the map. A vertical pipe beside the chamber, running up to a sidewalk grate. It had a speaking horn on our side, green with age. I thought of my phone. Voicemail. Speaker. My own voice saying, "Yeah." It was the only copy I had that was not alive, assuming that distinction still mattered. I pulled the phone from my waterproof pouch and opened the voicemail. No signal down there, but the message was saved. The screen was cracked from earlier, and my thumb barely worked. Behind us, footsteps entered the chamber. Not bodies. Reflections standing upright from the water. Mr. Pell. Me. Nina. My father. A firefighter I had never met. A child in a raincoat. A dozen people leaning out of the dark, all waiting for someone to answer them. Nina braced the gate with the crowbar. I shoved the phone speaker into the green horn and hit play. My recorded voice said, "Yeah?" The chamber went still. Every reflection turned toward the horn. The green pipe swallowed the sound and sent it upward. For a second, I heard my own voice travel through the city, moving from drain to drain, catch basin to catch basin, a little stupid yes running for its life. Then every voice in the chamber followed it. The pressure released so fast, my ears popped. Nina screamed without sound, mouth open, no voice coming out. We shoved the gate wheel the opposite direction together. This time the panel moved. Rust cracked. Water slammed into our knees. The listening gate closed with a heavy iron cough. My phone was gone. So was the voicemail. So was Nina's voice. She tried to speak and produced only breath. We climbed out using hand signals and pure spite. Above ground, her truck had rolled backward 6 feet with the parking brake on. The safety line was wrapped around the curb drain so tightly it had cut into the metal. Rain still fell, but the curb water moved normally now, down and away. Mr. Pell survived. That is the clean sentence. The dirtier one is that he survived with extra echoes in him. When people ask him direct questions, he sometimes answers in the wrong voice first. Usually mine. Once, Nina's. His condo board settled my invoice without argument and then sent me a letter banning me from the property, which might be the only reasonable thing they ever did. Nina's voice came back after 3 days. Mostly. She talks softer now. She hates speakerphones. If someone calls her name from another room, she makes them come into view before she answers. We do not work together anymore, but she sends me one blank text every time it rains hard. I send one back. It is our way of confirming without giving the drains anything useful. I burned the binder. I tried anyway. The cover blackened. The maps curled. The rule sheet would not catch. Water beaded on it from nowhere, putting out each match before the flame touched the paper. In the end, I sealed it in a plastic bin, filled the bin with concrete mix, and dropped it at a hazardous waste site under a fake name. 2 weeks later, a PDF copy appeared in my email. Subject line, replacement manual for a sign technician. I did not open it. The file preview showed the first page anyway. Field rules for underdrain personnel. Rule 1 was still there. Never answer your echo. But now there was a second line under it, written in fresh black ink. If it answers first, do not correct it. I moved out of that apartment. I changed phones. I took a job in a dry warehouse, 40 miles inland, which sounds comforting until you remember warehouses have roof drains, floor drains, utility sinks, bathrooms, loading dock trenches, all the little mouths a building needs to pretend it is not connected to everything else. Most days are fine. That is the part nobody likes in stories like this. They want the haunting to be constant or gone. Mine is seasonal. It waits for heavy rain and bad acoustics. It waits for someone to drop keys through a grate, or shout into a culvert, or ask a basement if anybody is down there. Last night, a storm hit after closing. I was alone in the warehouse office, doing inventory numbers while rain hammered the roof. The floor drain near the utility closet began to gurgle. I shut my laptop, stood up, and walked toward the exit without looking back. From the drain, Nina's voice whispered my name. I kept walking. Then Mr. Pell's voice said, "You dropped something." I kept walking. Then my own voice, close and tired and almost kind, said, "It's okay. I already answered." I stopped at the office door, not because I was going to speak, because the warehouse intercom clicked on above me, and every speaker in the building played my recorded voicemail at once. "Yeah?" The floor drain answered in my voice. Louder. This morning, there was a black binder on my desk, dry except for one wet fingerprint on the rule sheet. I have not opened it past the first page. I do not need to. The first rule says, never answer your echo. Under it, someone has added a third line. Too late is still an answer. There is something nasty about all three of these stories, leaving one instruction behind. Do not look, do not join, do not answer. The worst part is how reasonable those rules sound once it is already too late. If a storm drain answered in your own voice, could you stay quiet